When I was a little girl, I had a really great relationship with my mom. My mom would come to me and we literally talked about everything. She told me about my body from when I was little, like 3, 4. She brought out this book and she's like, this is what your body is. This is what, and she would say vagina, she would say penis, she would, I had a health book. There was no shame around your body. Like, I didn't grow up with shame with my body at all. And she talked about sex openly, and she was a believer. She was a believer. She got saved in her teens, and I just remember growing up knowing that it's sex is something that as believers we're supposed to wait. And that was what I always thought I would do, right? I thought I would wait until marriage. That was the goal. And I think one thing my mom told me, she said, when you were 7, one of my birthday wishes apparently was to only get married and only get married once. That's it. The reason why she said that was, I didn't see, but I grew up with my parents being divorced. And sometimes, I didn't have, any ill will towards either parent growing up, honestly. They co-parented very peacefully from what I remember. And coming back to just thinking about how I viewed my own body and my walk with the Lord, I really got saved really young. And I didn't really know what a relationship was with God. I just knew that, oh, this is this God thing, and I liked it. And one of the things that I've learned is because my mom had such an open relationship with me, with my body, and she said, look, if anything happens to you, if you ever make a decision with a boy, if you ever, I want you to wait. I want you to honor God, but I also know you may go make your own decisions, but I'm here. Never feel like you can't come to me. And I feel like I was so blessed to have that as my foundation, to have a parent be so open and transparent about sex, about my body, about my faith. And I really did wait as long as I did. And throughout my childhood, I, got to know God here and there. My mom was really, really there to make sure that I was involved in church, and not just involved just to be involved, but if she noticed that a church wasn't really involved in the youth, and so she would go to another church. And then, I ended up really falling in love with a church called Zion, and that's in my teen years. And I had relationships. I did not sleep with anyone because I wasn't ready and I didn't want to. And I'm glad that that wasn't a part of my experience. Growing up, I didn't have any trauma around a man doing anything to me, or a woman even doing anything to me. So I don't have that. So growing up, childhood wise, looking back, I just knew this is what you don't do. You just wait. And that was kind of it. And honestly, churches didn't talk about it growing up. It was just always just don't do it, or just don't get pregnant, or whatever. And it was a very like, that's it. And once I got out of the house, now you have to think, once I graduated, there were other things. I graduated from high school and now I'm in college, right? Now you get to decide what you want, what is going to happen. Even my relationship with God, like I still was really much involved in a church group. And there was a kind of young Christians getting together. We did Bible studies and stuff like that. And that was cool. And no, I wasn't sleeping with anyone or anything like that. But there came a point in my sophomore year. I remember the summer, and I remember meeting my college ex at the time, well, boyfriend at the time. And, that's when I decided after sophomore year, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, right? And one of the things that I never did, and now I look back at my life, I would pray about everything. I would pray about my family, college. I would pray about so many, but I never prayed about relationships. I never prayed about sex. I never prayed about lust. I didn't know to go to God about that thing. And I felt like God didn't care about that part of my life. Like, he just cares about me, like, being a follower. And so this is where you're naive in the thinking and the maturity of your relationship with God, of your knowing of who he is, where he wants to know all of you and not just part of you. And so that blockage between me and God praying about things, I just never talked about relationships. I met people, I dated them, it didn't work out. It was, and I went through the motions. I went through the motions in my 20s. And, after me and my college boyfriend at the time, we did, we were active. I actually ended up joining a small group at the time. And I was in a small group, really small, mostly women, maybe about 6 or 7 of us. And I was in my early 20s, maybe like 20, if that even, yeah, about 20. And so I'm about a junior by then. And I was like, okay, let's be in a small group. And I was a part of this group. I remember the leader of the group. This is why it's so important. The leader of the group, this woman was about in her 60s. So she was a lot older. And I remember that, during small groups, if you've never been in one, you talk about everything, right? This is my first exposure of talking about all aspects of life, not just John 3:16 and Jesus died for you. It's life. You're going to talk about things. So one of the topics was relationships that came up. And she asked me as a leader, she's like, you're sleeping with your boyfriend? And I said, yeah. I mean, I know I'm not supposed to. I get it. And she's just like, you shouldn't be doing that. And you need to stop. And that's a sin. And it was I still remember to this day how I felt about hearing it. And it wasn't that she was wrong. She wasn't wrong because she was right. But that was the problem. I never understood so just don't do it. Okay, don't do it. But then what happens if you do decide to do it and then you're not supposed? So all I heard was no. I never had accountability. So I think as a leader, I was in her group for maybe a couple years, and then eventually I left. And one thing that I always remember to this day, I said, if I ever am a leader, or if I'm ever talking with someone, another believer, and they're struggling with something, or especially this area, because I felt like this is that area that God's like, I'm going to work on Debbie in this area. Yes, she fell. Yes, she decided to go, sin. But I said, I'm not going to condemn. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to show compassion, and I'm going to walk it out with someone, because no one did that for me. No one did that for me. And no, I didn't go to my mom and say, oh, I didn't do that, right? I'm in my 20s. It's like you kind of want to be an adult, whatever. But the thing is, I never prayed about it. But all I got was just conviction. So what happened was, once I left the small group, I remember this, I, still in a relationship, but the Holy Spirit kept convicting me. Every once in a while, I would get this conviction, like, right after or days after, whatever. And I was like, I know I have to stop. I know I have to stop. I don't know how to stop, but I know I have to. And that was the problem. I didn't have accountability. I didn't have a person I could talk to about it, because most of the people, even if they were saved, I knew they were doing. So you just don't have a space to talk to anyone about. You don't know what you're doing. You're not praying about it. So I was lost. Let's be real. I was lost. And I remember how one day I went to my college boyfriend at the time and I said, I'm stopping. Like, we have to stop. And I remember that was like the end of our relationship, basically. So he basically told me, yeah, well, I don't think I can be in a relationship with you if we don't have sex. Literally, his words. And I said to myself, so I'm not good enough without that. And he was just like, I just don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I could just like cut it off. And I think for me, it really did a number on my self-esteem. It did this is where now you're seeing the aftermath of making a decision like this. And now you're trying to do the right thing. And you have a partner in your life that's like, I don't, and mind you, he was a believer too. See, that's the thing. People always think, oh, well, maybe you were somebody that doesn't believe. No, he did too. Grew up in church, all the things. But once you're in sin, once you know, and then someone wants to do something different. And when I tell you, after I made that decision, after I decided, like, I'm stopping then. You could think that our relationship just went to crap. And I remember how, like, we just weren't connecting anymore. He, was connecting with someone. I was starting to connect with other people. We eventually broke up. And even that whole, how that situation went down impacted me for years, like for years. And after that breakup, after college, so at this point, I'm 21. I'm in my 20s, still in my early 20s. And, he wanted to marry me, and it was the whole thing, and loved his family and all that. But realizing, no, this is not right. So ended that relationship and still wasn't praying to God about any of this stuff. I remember this. Still not praying to God. And